welcome to, well, it's called Back to the Basics, actually. My name is Marc Singer. I'm Dean of the School of Undergraduate Studies at GGU, and I'm really excited to be talking with our guest today, Amelia Linde, and I have a really good bio for Amelia, so I'm going to read you some of it. She's originally from Belmont, California. She currently lives in the South Beach neighborhood in San Francisco. Amelia is the Small Business Policy and Engagement Manager for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to have a lot to talk about today about small business and all the things related to that. But in that job, Amelia works to support small businesses as they navigate the complicated nuances of doing business in San Francisco. From supporting B2B business development to connecting businesses with resources and helping them understand the potential impacts of new legislation. She's really a subject matter expert and resource to help small businesses in as comprehensive a way as possible. So we're really lucky to have her with us. And you know, she grew up working for her family's small businesses, and that's really what drove her passion for the work she does now. And you know, not only that, but she works to keep the neighborhoods of San Francisco as vibrant as they can possibly be. Is that all that pretty much right? You know,
that works. Okay. Covers it. Thank you so much, Marc.
Sure. So I just said you're from California. You live in South Beach, but didn't you also, you were out of state for a little while too? It's not like you've been here every minute of your life, right?
Yes, I did live out of state for quite a while, and I attended school for both my undergrad and my master's degree in beautiful Albuquerque, New Mexico, at the University of New Mexico. And so not Golden Gate University, unfortunately, but maybe a law degrees in my future. We'll see.
All right, we'll see.
So I was there, and I also went to prep school in Maine. So I guess you could say that I've been involved in small businesses across the country because my family has been in all those places as well. But I finally decided it was time to come back to San Francisco, and was really glad to land at the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce because I care so much about, you know, supporting local business development, local small businesses, and good government. So that's kind of what we work on there.
Oh, wow. That's great. I know the Chamber's been involved in a lot of things. We've been involved with the Chamber to some extent, you know, for the last few years here at Golden Gate, but I can imagine that the work you do has been changed quite a bit in the last few months since we're all working from home. It's probably changed the way a lot of people think about small business. All right, I said that as like one of those leading questions where the answer is like yes, but I should have said, like, how has this changed the way small businesses are operating in San Francisco?
Yeah, well, it certainly has changed a lot. Before we entered the COVID-19 shelter in place and ultimately the crisis it has caused, we were already in a really rough situation with small businesses in San Francisco. We think about San Francisco as being an economy that's just booming, and it's been just amazing golden egg laying economy here, right? Unfortunately, while small businesses have been, you know, busy and packed, and they've had plenty of patrons over the last years, we've still been facing a lot of challenges with some of the local regulation that makes doing innovative things challenging. Sometimes getting businesses open can be very challenging. And also the margins that small businesses are operating on are just paper thin. So even if you see a restaurant that's packed, there is a number of you know, different factors that made that challenging. So before COVID, we were focusing really closely on trying to identify some of the biggest sticking points for small businesses, sole proprietorships, and that like, and you know, trying to make San Francisco the best place to be a small business and save the businesses that we were actually already sort of losing at an alarming rate. Now that we've moved into COVID-19, we had to really pivot towards trying to do anything we could to retain the small businesses and support the base that was here in San Francisco already. And a lot of things have happened really quickly in legislation to try and address COVID-related issues. And so we do a lot of work at watching what's coming down the pike and making sure help to weed out any unforeseen circumstances or impacts, and also try to identify where there are hindrances to small businesses and try to advocate and push and help small businesses to be able to pivot and survive COVID. And I don't mean to rattle on the subject, but just one great example of that is, Rodney Fong is our president and CEO of the Chamber. He's also one of the leaders for the Economic Recovery Task Force with the city, which is a broad group of business and community leaders working to help support businesses and the economy through COVID. And so one program that came out of that, and with some of our advocacy work as well, is the Shared Spaces program, and some more options for businesses to be able to utilize spaces, for example, in front of their storefront more safely. So there's real clear work that has to be done to allow businesses to survive and persevere right now.
So the program is actually called Shared Spaces, and businesses can, I guess, apply for a permit to use the spaces in and around their.
Yes, so it's a free permit program that basically allows them to go a lot more quickly and easily onto using the spaces in front of their storefront. So that's how you're able to see a lot more restaurants doing outdoor dining. Maybe some businesses have some sort of displays in front of their shops as well.
Right. Yeah. So as I understand it, you and I talked a little bit before this show, and so really one of the many things that you do is and you and the Chamber do, is act as a resource for people to even find out about these kinds of things. This legislation that might be coming, new. I know there's a number of tax measures that might end up on the ballot this fall, right? And so they turn to you to help them make sense of what's going on, I suppose.
Yes, definitely. I think one of the most important things we've been doing throughout the last several months has been being an aggregator and distributor of key information. With all of those changes coming through that I mentioned, we've had a lot of folks, and we've opened this up. We are a membership-based organization, so generally our resources and tools are focused towards our members and also broadly the economy of San Francisco. But now we've just kind of taken down any paywall and opened it up to anyone, because we realized there was such a big demand for understanding what is out there and what's available. So we really closely follow what's happening, with federal resources through the Small Business Administration, the local Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and California state resources to help small businesses understand what's available to them and help direct them to places that can help. And then likewise, with new legislation and programs coming through, XYZ, there might be a brand new health order on Friday that no one knew was coming that has to be implemented by Tuesday. And so as soon as those come out, we try and latch on, make sure we understand everything about them, and help the business owners and operators understand the implications as well.
All right, so that's you're busy a lot then.
Very, very busy. Lots of singular emails. What does this mean for me? XYZ. And actually, that's why starting next week, we are opening up general help desk office hours on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. And those will be open to anyone to join in, talk through issues they're having, learn about some resources that might be available to them, and ask for help and guidance.
Oh, wow, that's great. So, you know what, I will I'll put your a link to the website in the chat here, and then of course when this gets posted on YouTube, because it will, all of you who are here live right now, if you will hear a lot of really important things that you'll want your friends to know about, and then they'll just go to the YouTube channel, GGU's YouTube channel, and find it there. I think that's what I got. I think that's correct. But I'll correct that in the YouTube notes. Oh, and then your email. Wow, you just put.
Yeah, I'm dropping. Well, the lucky folks who decided to join us live today get my email address, which you can also find on the SF Chamber website. And if you have any specific questions that pertain to a particular topic, you can feel free to reach out.
That's great. That's great. So all right. So we've been talking about the Chamber and what the Chamber does. But I want to also talk a little bit about small business, and this will seem like maybe a silly question, but I realized I didn't know the answer. Like, how do you define small business in the context of the San Francisco and the Bay Area?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So it actually does have a couple of different definitions at different levels. Specifically, where it gets most segmented is with the SBA, Small Business Administration. You can have, particularly in a business like manufacturing, it can still be considered a small business, even with a larger amount of employees than we might consider a small business, due to their, margins and their high turnover, high revenues, but small business size, small margins, whatever. So that's really can be very segmented. In San Francisco, we keep it very simple, and it's generally any business of 100 employees or fewer under a specific revenue. I think it's around 25 million. You can still be a small business. And then we have micro businesses and sole proprietorships. So when we talk about micro businesses, because we do sometimes differentiate, we're really talking about that 1 to 5. Maybe it's a family business, or maybe it's a, really an individual small proprietorship, or those folks who perhaps run a daycare service or something like that. And we do that because there tends to be a little bit of a differentiation in the resources that are required for those kind of businesses.
I see. All right. So they're unique, distinct categories that we have to understand. So does the chamber do like a ceremony when somebody moves from being a micro business to being just like a small business?
No, we do not currently have that in place, but it's something I could consider.
I'm just thinking it might be helpful. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. That's good to know. Yeah. Because but even if you're not a small business, there's really this, again, it's something we were talking about. There's this kind of ecosystem, right, that really depends upon small businesses thriving and doing well. And then likewise, the flip side is true. Like, so in our neighborhood on Mission Street, because Salesforce is not there, it's affecting all of the small businesses in the area. And really for big organizations to work well, they have to have an ecosystem of small businesses that are able to provide their employees and I guess as vendors, providing the things that cater to their needs, right? So it's not just something that's unique to these folks who are small businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is really a holistic issue because it is a truly integrated ecosystem between large, medium, small businesses, even nonprofits and government here in San Francisco. If any issue that we look at, we're looking at down to the granular, how can this, really ripple through the rest of our economy and impact other businesses, especially small businesses. It can happen very quickly and easily. Right now with COVID-19, obviously everything came to a screeching halt. And so some of the businesses in certain neighborhoods where most of their business was already reliant on the folks who lived in the immediate area, they might be okay. But as we talk about some of the more commercial corridors and business districts, all of those small businesses are just at a huge detriment, not only with the day-to-day grabbing a sandwich for lunch from employees downtown or the after work kind of get-togethers, but also thinking about all of those, huge sustaining purchases like catering orders or services for cleaning a building, or the folks who use that dry cleaner in the city rather than the one by their house in Burlingame. So when we think about all this stuff, it is just absolutely a collage, and it's totally intermingled. So.
Right. And it's a lot of what we think of as just the day-to-day life in the city, right? It's just, you probably interact with small businesses way more than you realize you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is just like, when we talk about businesses leaving or closing in San Francisco, small businesses matter so much, because what is it that makes San Francisco an enjoyable and vibrant place to live? It's, the choices that we have in grocery stores to shop from anywhere from Whole Foods to Rainbow Grocers and to Gus's Market, or we have, it's not just some corporate chain for getting a massage, but it's somebody whose story you can learn from, and they've been in San Francisco their entire life. It's so much about interest in arts and creativity in San Francisco. And so when that starts to fall away, then who really wants to be here?
Yeah. So it's something that we've talked about a few times on previous episodes of this show, but with all these changes, like, and all these effects on small businesses, how does the idea of community get affected, or even the sense of place, right? Because most of us are working online now. Like, do we have to rethink how we think about our community with that?
I think so. That is, that's a really challenging thing to navigate, is that, I work for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, which is extremely community centric. But there's obviously a lot of temptation for me to go and, stay with my family up in wine country. But then you have to think about, oh, wait, am I still really engaged in the community if I'm not literally there? But on the other hand, I can't really do anything in person. So you're right. I think a lot of things are going to be redefined through the next coming years. And this is probably not going to change back to any previous version after we hopefully very soon eradicate COVID-19. I mean, we're seeing changes that are going to have an impact on our society for the next 100 years in terms of how we interact with each other and what that means to be a part of a community. So a lot of it is just maybe forming even tighter communities between who we interact with, even if that's in a virtual setting, and just redefining what it means to be part of that.
Yeah. So, all right, that's interesting. You mentioned that about the long-term effects, because I was thinking, some people assume, that we'll get past this and then we'll go back to exactly how things were before. We'll just, and that should be our goal. From what you're suggesting, it sounds like that's not a reasonable goal for us.
I don't think so, and we need to be really aware of that as we are planning strategies for governance in the future and new policies and what we expect to happen with. Now we have a pretty large amount of office space stock available, for example. Like, we need to be thinking about the fact that these changes are going to be with us for a while as we plan for tomorrow. And think about that when it comes to, presenting potential new taxes, for example, or new policies as they relate to business. Right now, the city is facing, almost, it looks like by the end of it, we're probably going to see something like a $2 billion budget deficit. And when we're talking about our tax base and planning right now, we're planning on the businesses that we expected to have in place. But what we're seeing from our membership base is that, upwards of 50% of businesses are not going to reopen. Like, they're just not, or they're going to not reopen here. And so when you talk about planning for like city revenue and services and city budget, it's really, really difficult to be, making major changes at the moment, because we don't even know who that tax base is going to be next year.
Right. So it's hard for us to really plan, like, in terms of long-term goals, right? I imagine for the chamber, this would be a challenge for businesses as well. I mean, so what do you do, right? Aren't we all supposed to be thinking like, what's the long-term, what's going to be a sustainable plan? Do you see people trying to do that right now, or doing it well?
I think so. Some people are really thinking about it. Businesses are doing what they can to try and be more resilient. And, a lot of businesses are, as a result, having to cut costs. So that's a key thing. I mean, I think the city, I actually didn't get the chance to look at it yet because the mayor just released her budget for this next year. So after this, I can guarantee I'm going to be diving right into that to take a closer look and see what's on the table and what's off the table for the next year. So it's a matter of just looking at where folks can tighten the belt, figuring out creative new revenue streams. And for small businesses and any business, frankly, it's really important to consider what your opportunities and options are with your business and your revenue streams. If something is not working right now, it's probably not going to be working for the next year. I mean, if that's a major revenue stream for you, and it's something that's been impacted by COVID, there's a lot of cases where there's really no way to pivot to the point that that's going to come back. So at that point, you have to look at what your other opportunity and capital is that could be utilized to build revenue streams. So it's a lot of looking at how to pivot for the current moment, but also thinking about how this is going to have a long-term effect. And we hear, business leaders who will remind us that some of the best companies that we have come out of times of recession and depression, and they come through innovation. So, hopefully our silver lining when we're through this in a few years is that we'll have some great new innovations and great ideas in business.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this before. So really, while many people are affected negatively, most of us are affected negatively, there are these opportunities for creative approaches, for rethinking business models, if you will. I think that's something that you've talked about before. And have you seen anyone doing a good job of that, or examples of how people might approach that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just say, first off, I've been working closely with a group of project managers, project management professionals who have been pro bono working with small businesses that come into my program, and helping them to basically perform a SWOT analysis on what they have and where they could go. And so just really helping with that narrative. But there have been some really great examples of businesses who have been able to pivot. A lot of restaurants you'll see that are operating, I mean, you'll go there and kind of expect to order one thing, but you'll realize they've cut their menu in half. And that's just an example of focusing on the things that are working well and eliminating the extra, fluff. I think one example I shared with you before was that I saw towards the beginning, and I haven't checked back in with where they are right now, but Farm Girls Flowers, I was really impressed by the way they redirected their supply chain and were able to kind of cut out a couple of steps to bring their product directly to their customers, and pivot from some of their distribution channels that were no longer able to function in COVID-19. And so they were, they saw the problem, they just did what they could to identify the best possible solution, and they ran with it. And it was amazing to me how quickly they did that and were successful. They got some good media about that. And then businesses, have been trying to open up food trucks. It's actually kind of tough to open a food truck in San Francisco. It just takes a tremendous amount of permitting, and folks think it's easier than it is. So if you don't have a permit, don't do it though, because they will slam you. But just ways that folks can, pivot. We've seen a lot of local manufacturers pivot to making face coverings.
Yeah, I've seen that. And
that
distilleries making hand sanitizer, I've seen, right?
Yeah, I went to the Barrel Room. They had nice outdoor seating the other evening, and I used the hand sanitizer. And I don't know if this has happened to anybody, that you go somewhere and you use the hand sanitizer and your hands feel worse than they did before. And you're like, oh my gosh, what was that? So this did not happen at the Barrel Room. At the Barrel Room, which is downtown, they had this hand sanitizer. I used it. It was wonderful. It was floral. Turns out they were making it in their distilling process. So they made it themselves, and it was phenomenal. Oh, wow. Stepping to the challenge.
That's pretty cool. Although I'll tell you, there's another distillery, and I'm not going to mention their name because they don't come out looking good in this story, that has switched to making hand sanitizer, because the alcohol is easily changed to that. But they use their regular liquor bottles. And so you get these things that look just like liquor, which you're not supposed to drink.
Oh, wait, no, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it is, right? But I'm not going to mention who they are. But you'll know when you see their bottles on the shelf in the supermarket. So.
Gosh, well, it's like, I think Louis Vuitton was doing the same thing. They were making hand sanitizer and putting it in little Louis Vuitton bottles, but luckily people don't usually drink Louis Vuitton, so.
No, I hope not. Yeah.
Just hope they're not, yeah.
Wow. All right. So we should probably, I have some questions. Oh, and by the way, as far as questions are concerned, if folks who are tuned in, if you have any questions, you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a Q&A. There's also a chat. Don't put the questions in chat. Put the questions in the Q&A, and then we'll be able to get to them. There actually already is one question already, which is something I should have asked at the very beginning, which is there a sort of a census of how many small businesses there are in San Francisco?
Sure. Well, all of the data we have is from before COVID for the most part right now, and there's not really a formal process for determining or letting the city know that you've closed before tax season, basically. So before the COVID pandemic, we had about 95,000 businesses in San Francisco and about 90,000 small businesses. And it sounds like a lot. That's about, like, if you just say it's like one person per business, then that's 10% of our population. So if you could think about what that means for local employers and how many of us actually work for small businesses, if the chamber is a nonprofit, but it would be a small business. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a huge number. And then we have a lot of solopreneurs and, single entrepreneurs and manufacturers and those kind of things. Lots of family-owned businesses in San Francisco, which are just amazing. And that's kind of something special about us, is how many we have and the diversity we have.
Yeah, no, especially considering all the pressures that work against a small business succeeding. It's amazing that people are still entrepreneurial and still pushing mm-hmm. hard to launch their shop or whatever it is that they're doing. It's great, because I know the costs can be much higher.
Yeah, and I think it's, and we have a great community that understands the importance of it and how small businesses can be a tool for bridging equity gaps and for helping with build generational wealth. And so, we're really a special place for that. That being said, again, those numbers are pre-COVID. And the numbers that we're seeing for expectations for where we're going to end up with keeping those businesses, I think most folks will see the headlines, every day. Or if you follow SF Eater, they they cover a lot of the restaurants that are just like heartbreaking for us that we're losing right now. So we'll see where we are next year. Not going to be quite there.
Yeah, no, there was I know this because we talked about it in the conversation last week with the restaurant owner in Oakland, and UC Santa Cruz has done it's a national number, but they estimated that 41% of Black-owned businesses had closed since COVID, and 17% of white-owned businesses. So they were, the focus of their study was really about the equity issues there and the funding gaps that people have, but both numbers are huge. I think the overall number, and this was as of a month ago, and it's probably gone higher. It's certainly gone higher. Was over a quarter of small businesses had closed around the United States.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And, we're going to, now what people are doing, which is really sad, is like trying to get through to the end of their lease to close, because a lot of small businesses, if you think about it, don't have a corporation backing them. They have invested probably their own personal savings and finances and property into a small business. So they have to get through that lease. They have to get through those bills and through all of the, payments to vendors. They can't just go bankrupt, because when they go bankrupt, that's them going bankrupt with a small business. So that's another added challenge. And I'm glad you brought up the question of equity, because we've seen that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected traditionally underserved communities. And when you think about that, then think about all of those ripple effects. Of course, we're going to see a larger impact on businesses who have had fewer advantages. So it's really important that we support our different communities. During Small Business Week, the San Francisco Council of District Merchants Associations, we partnered with for Small Business Week. They hosted a great webinar on showcasing Black-owned businesses and what that means to be a Black entrepreneur in 2020. So that was a great program. And also at the Chamber, on our weekly newsletters, we've been highlighting different listings of minority-owned businesses in San Francisco and the Bay Area to encourage folks to really make an extra concerted effort to support those businesses.
Wow. And I should mention that, as I understand it, there are a number of supports that are in place to help small businesses, as you're mentioning, Black-owned businesses, and then other businesses as well. And a lot of those come from the Chamber, or at least the Chamber can act as a sort of a clearinghouse for information about those. Can you talk about some of those supports that are available and what small businesses can do for themselves during the pandemic?
Definitely. So we have, there's a few different schools of support for small business. There's, educational resources, and then there's access to capital resources. And then there's, a bit more of like hands-on coaching kind of organizations. And we have a lot of them, and they specialize in really, specific areas, and they do a really good job at what they do. So what I like to do, rather than trying to reinvent all of the work that they're doing, because it's such a broad area of resources, is that I try to figure out who is doing what, and then help small businesses, get directed to the right place that will help them. So we have support for small businesses at federal, state, and local level. When we talk about government, so Small Business Administration, the GoBiz program, which is the Governor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development. And then we have Office of Economic and Workforce Development in San Francisco, and the Office of Small Business. So you can see how this could get a little bit confusing for folks, because a lot of them sound very similar, but specialize in different areas. So if folks are looking for help on a local, issue, I would recommend talking to the Office of Small Business as your first stop, because they're also excellent at helping people get in contact with the right folks to help them. Then if you're talking about California issues, I work at the California level, and likewise federal. So SBA, which is the Small Business Administration.
That's federal.
That's the federal level. That's the group that has done, Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, as folks have been hearing it. They do the EIDL loans, which is the emergency loans. And then they also have a great program called SCORE, which is retired executives who do business coaching for small businesses. And then beyond this, there's a number of amazing nonprofits that all work, and they'll do a lot more like personalized one-on-one levels. So there's no possible way I could cover all of them right now. However, I would encourage folks, if they're looking for help on something, like if you want to come to my Wednesday help desk, come there and I can help you get in contact with whoever it is who's best fit to serve you. Number of great nonprofits: Renaissance Development Center, Mission Economic Development Agency, or META, and beyond, Small Business Development Center. There's a lot of help out there, and we try to kind of stay in contact and get people to the right places.
I'm writing this down because I'm going to try to put all of this into the comments on the YouTube thing. So I'm going to ask you for names again because that was too fast. I didn't write them all down.
Sorry, that's a lot.
No, that's all right. I didn't know that was coming. I wasn't prepared. No, that's great. But I should mention, by the way, this is not a promotion, but I just happen to have on my desk here, I know August 25th, we're going to be hosting a roundtable here through GGU Presents, which will, as it turns out, feature a number of panelists who are in some of those organizations you mentioned. So Fiona Ma, who is a GGU alum and is also now the California State Treasurer, will be there. So will Chris Dombrowski, who's from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. That's the GoBiz that you talked about, right? And also Julie Klaus from the SBA, the Small Business Administration.
Awesome.
And that's August 25th. Yeah, that'll be on our website, more information about that. But
awesome.
Okay. Yeah, so this is good. It seems like we're sort of gravitating to a larger discussion about small business in this series. It's just been something that's affected so many people at GGU, and also the people in our sort of universe. So it's been a topic that a lot of people have asked us about. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, like, what about you mentioned education. And of course, I don't know if you remember, I'm the dean of the School of Undergraduate Studies.
Oh, right.
Belmont State University. Yeah. So education's a thing I like to think about. What sort of education opportunities are there now? I mean, I had written this to myself to ask you as a question, but it's one of those questions where I know what the answer is. Like, there is a need for people to become more educated or to be upskilled, as we say more and more lately during this time. I mean, there's always a need for that. But especially now, as people need to become more resilient, as you were talking about, and just more adaptable to the situation. Can you talk about, I know the Chamber has been sort of pointing people to things like that, but can you talk about any initiatives like that you've seen that have been effective or interesting ideas?
There is a lot of work kind of starting to ramp up in that space in the last several years, I think, as we realize that the jobs, what everyone says now, that the jobs that are going to be hired for in 10 years are not being taught in school yet today, or something like that. I'm sure you know the expression perfectly, but you get what I mean. So there has been some work in that area. I think, City College, just continuing to support City College as well, is a really great gateway for helping students get started and understand where they might want to end up. I think some of the educational programs are that focus on kind of high school and younger youth are extremely important for helping them to realize the possibilities of tomorrow. And we've seen a lot of great work with that, whether it's the YMCA has a E2E internship program and kind of career prep program. And so we routinely host interns from them, and they get to learn a lot about, business. Actually, we're a great place to intern if you want to learn about different industries, because we work with so many different industries. So I think internships and real live work experience is one of the greatest tools for folks figuring out what they want to do, whether that's a professional internship with some of the businesses we have here, before you just decide to jump in with both feet, right? So there's a lot of great work happening there. And then we are working, on our Unite SF program, which we at the Chamber we've had for many years, has focused on helping get young people ready for college, ready for careers, and to build more of a relationship between large small businesses and educational institutions. So I think that's something that we're really working on right now, is figuring out what that should look like in the next few years to best serve the current needs. So we'll see what else comes out of it.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's been sort of caught, not by surprise, but maybe we could have been more prepared for this. Well, I don't know how we could have been more prepared, but yeah, we're at GGU. I know on our part, as a university, where our approach to the solutions are a little different. But we've been trying to launch certificate programs that'll help people learn new, more relevant skills. But I think the sort of continuing ed model and I love the idea of internships. Can I send my students to you? Is that?
No, I can only take about, we're small, we are mighty staff, but we are small. And also we've been focusing with the YMCA students first. However, I think if they can find internships anywhere, that's one of the best things you can do while you're pursuing your degree or your education. Oh.
Sounds great. That sounds great. All right, well, good. I want to ask you one more thing. So what does this next year look like? I know that most of the things for you have been virtual. Like you mentioned, Small Business Week. For the first time ever, that was online, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't do that in person. I know there are a number of other. There's some programming that's coming up for in your area. Do you want to mention some of the things you're working on?
Yeah, and then I know you dropped the link for our website. So on that website, if you navigate there to our events calendar, you can kind of click through a lot of the programs we have going. We have, what we're really focused on right now is trying to figure out how to continue raising awareness about key issues that are going on. If you think about it, a lot of people are missing certain elements of just being around the water cooler talking about what's happening right now. So we're trying to provide that a little bit. And then we're trying to provide opportunities for people to have meaningful interpersonal connections. So, and get where they need to go and replace some of the things we've always done at the Chamber. So we have weekly, we work closely and have this organization under the Chamber called Job Forum, and they do job hunt focused topics every week, which is a great little networking opportunity, a great opportunity to learn and to be kind of re-energized. And they've been focusing a lot on topics related to job hunting during COVID-19. So I highly recommend checking out those programs, which are free. Everything, as you said, will be remain virtual. We have pretty much weekly webinars at the Chamber now, which focus on topics much like what you're doing. It's a broad area of topics, primarily focused around policies, changes happening with different government agencies, what larger businesses are doing to pivot, and then about some of the tools that folks can be using to become more resilient right now. So folks can find some of those on our calendar as well and keep an eye out. I would also recommend, the easiest thing to do would probably be to follow all of our social media channels for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, because we truly do just keep everyone up to date with what we're doing, and you can get access to some of our previously concluded programming as well. But everything for the foreseeable future is going to be virtual and very creative. From our EBBYs, the business awards that we do annually, to Bayshop, which is the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame celebration. So
that's still going to go on as planned, I guess.
They will still, well, I believe, so Bayshop has been pushed, the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame has been pushed to the next year. But EBBYs will still take place. We have a women's education and leadership conference called WELL, and that will be taking place in a virtual setting. So we're still, really making sure that we engage with our members and with the public. There's still a lot of great ways to get involved, and we're doing everything we can to give people that kind of feeling of being in person.
Yeah, I think it's really been important for us too to try to keep folks engaged. I think for the first couple months, it was a little disorienting. Then people were saying, "Oh, I kind of like being at home." And then now there's been this new wave that I'm starting to notice among people where they're just starting to get antsy sometimes, and then others are feeling just more and more isolated. And I think it's really important for us to keep these events going, to stay engaged as best we can.
Absolutely, while respecting the fact that Zoom is certainly more fatiguing for constantly having meetings than other things. Exactly. I mean, that's definitely a bit of a challenge. So that just makes us have to think more intentionally about the content that we're putting out there and the time that we're using, because where a 2-hour in-person breakfast might have been fine before with great speakers and networking, that is not going to cut it in this virtual setting. So it's, the changes that we're seeing are endless.
No, and you got to bring your own breakfast too, I guess, right? I
And you got to
mean,
bring your own breakfast.
so that's time to clear plates away.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. Well, Amelia, I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us, with me today. Amelia Linde, you're the small business. Wait a minute, I have the whole thing: policy and engagement manager for the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. Did I get that right? Is that?
Yeah, that's good.
It's a nice long title. Yeah, it's good.
A very long title.
No, but it means
I wouldn't catch you if it was wrong.
it means you do a lot, right? I mean, if it were just like a one-word title, you're like, that's she
I
does
do
a
a
lot.
lot. I do a lot, which is fitting because small businesses do a lot. They're all the masters of being generalists, and they all do a work experience MBA, whether anybody thinks it or not. So
Yeah, it's really
definitely
true.
makes sense.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to us today. And like I said, we've got another a roundtable on small business, August 25th at 11 a.m. And we'll put more details about that on our website. Um, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. And if you saw this on YouTube, thanks for watching the YouTube. Okay. So talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Goodbye.